days, like saying lasterday instead of yesterday, or elbow leg for knee. Even when children stick to the rules of a language, they still come up with the darndest things. For example, just a casual look at parenting blogs yields all sorts of creative gems. One 7-year-old asked, "Are there more leaves in the world or blades of grass?" And then followed up with this doozy, "Are there more bricks in the world or bird feathers?" Or this by a 6-year-old, "What is the name of the space between the bits that stick out on a comb?" Where in the world are these questions coming from? All you need are rules, creativity, and a healthy sense of curiosity. As we'll see in the next lecture, this ability seems to be uniquely human and perhaps even genetically endowed within us. No other species on the planet comes close to this sort of linguistic creativity. The next 3 design features are displacement, cultural transmission, and reflexiveness. These 3 are pretty unique by themselves, but when you package them together, they highlight the true specialness of human language. The first of the trio, displacement, refers to the fact that language can be used to communicate about things not in the here and now. Think about it. How much of what we say is about things that are far away and not occurring in the present moment? We have entire fields of study that involve things out of plain sight, like physics and astronomy and chemistry. And in the past, archaeology, history, and geology. Or in the future, economics, climatology, architecture. Or consider some of the things that children typically say. Not only do they talk about things that are right around them, but they also talk about things that are quite displaced. How many days until my birthday? I fell off my bike yesterday. When are we going to grandmother's house? This sort of communication is quite rare in the animal kingdom. Most communication in every other species is trapped in the here and now, locating the presence of predators or prey, making or blocking sexual advances, marking one's territory, announcing one's arrival, and calling for help. Now, there are some well-known exceptions of animals communicating outside the here and now. For example, bees communicate about the precise location of food sources in far-off distances, and vervet monkeys give alarm calls that tell fellow monkeys where to hide when a leopard or an eagle approaches. We'll talk more about these specific examples in the next lecture. Even if non-human communication occasionally breaks free from the here and now, the sorts of things that animals communicate about is much, much more limited than humans. This is illustrated nicely by our next design feature. Cultural transmission means that human language is not directly and completely passed down through our genes. Nobody is born with a brain designed to speak Portuguese, Bantu, or Hawaiian. To speak these languages, we need to learn them first. This should not be taken for granted because most other species are different. They are born with an innate and fixed set of communication signals. So there's no learning required at all for them. This is not true of all animals. For example, songbirds are a notable exception, but it's true for most animals. Even birds are innately constrained by what they communicate about. When birds sing, they share a very limited amount of information, like marking their territory, showing their dominance, and trying to attract potential mates. That's about it. When you hear 2 birds tweeting outside your window in the morning, they're not talking about how well they slept last night or where they plan to fly that day. These things are unique to humans. We tweet all sorts of things. I need to emphasize this point because it's so important. Humans are the only species that can and do communicate about everything. We take this for granted, but anything can be a topic of talk. So the next time you find yourself in a tedious conversation about politics or the good old days or the rainy weather, pause for a moment to appreciate that humans are the only ones on the planet chatting about such things. Perhaps the most interesting and unusual thing that humans talk about is talk itself. This feature is called reflexiveness. Human language can be used to describe or refer to itself. This occurs in all sorts of ways. It can range from the very simple, such as, "I didn't hear you," or "How many times do I have to tell you this?" or "I don't believe a word you said." But it can be much more sophisticated too. For example, the legal profession is built on the interpretation of words. Or consider that at every level of education, there are curricula dedicated to teaching people how to read, write, or speak better. In fact, there is an entire literary cottage industry about it. I still recall William Strunk and E.B. White's advice in their classic book, The Elements of Style, imploring writers to omit needless words or use the active voice. Communicating about communication is what cognitive psychologists call metacognition, and it goes hand in hand with another unique aspect of the human mind. Humans can think about thinking. This is one of the crown jewels of human cognition, and later in the course we'll explore the neural mechanisms that make it possible. This trio of features, displacement, cultural transmission, and reflexiveness, illustrates the remarkable range of human communication. Absolutely nothing is off limits for us. In fact, language is so open that over historical time, it's forced humans to create social norms and laws that regulate what can and cannot be said. This next pair of features, specialization and prevarication, are two sides of the same coin. They both have to do with the pragmatics of language. A unique feature of all language, spoken and signed, is the eighth design feature. Language is specialized for one purpose: to deliberately communicate. This may seem self-evident, but consider other behaviors that communicate but are not specifically designed for it. When a newborn baby cries, is it intentionally making sounds to communicate discomfort? Or are the cries themselves just an unintentional manifestation of the discomfort? Or what about facial expressions? When a baby smiles, is she trying to communicate that she's feeling good? Or is that just what feeling good looks like? What about adults' nonverbal expressions? Think back to the last time that you tasted something truly disgusting. Was the face you made intended to communicate, or was it just a byproduct of the feeling? Or what about cursing out in pain after stubbing a toe? Were you trying to communicate something, or is that just a reflex? Oh, and here's a juicy one. What about flirting? When you laugh, make eye contact, and lean in, that may signal flirtation, but is it always intentional? These examples fall into murky areas, but language is crystal clear. When you say a word or produce a sign, you have one purpose in mind: to communicate. Not only that, you know that other people know that you're trying to communicate. This sort of mutual understanding of intentions is at the heart of language, and for that matter, human cognition more generally. This is even true when you use language with no one else around. When you make a list of things to remember, your intention is to communicate with your future self so you don't forget something. And you expect your future self to understand that intention. Have you ever talked to yourself? To my knowledge, no other species communicates with itself to solve problems or consider different perspectives. This specialized communicative function of language is also evident when you accidentally miscommunicate something. If you've ever said, "That's not what I meant," you're implicitly acknowledging that words have intentions even if they are misunderstood. That's why we're so suspicious when someone says something offensive and then quickly announces, "Oh, I didn't mean anything by that." Even if that's not an outright lie, it reflects the serious naivete of the speaker. Of course they meant something. This example takes us to the flip side of specialization. The ninth design feature is prevarication, which means that human language allows us to lie, and lie well. If you think about it, it's quite strange that humans would deliberately say one thing while knowing another thing to be true. And yet we learn to do this at a pretty young age. Certainly by the age of 4, children have learned the trick of using language to concoct untrue stories. I don't know what happened to the cookies. I did not pull my sister's hair. It wasn't me. The fact that humans lie seems bizarre if you think about the semantic property of language. We've put all this effort into creating precise words for things, so why would we not accurately describe those things with the right words? The answer comes when we move up to the pragmatic component of language. Pragmatics tells us that words are driven by intentions, and if lying with language helps us actualize those goals, then truth be damned. We often rely on things other than language to seek the truth. We pay attention to the way people say things, and not to just what they say, in order to judge someone's true intentions. Think back to a time when you didn't trust what someone was saying, even though you had no proof the person was lying. What gave you that impression? Maybe the person had a bad reputation for lying, or maybe there was something in the eyes or face or hands that set off alarm bells for you. Can other species lie? Clearly, they can deceive. You can see that easily with the camouflage of a chameleon or the feigned death of a possum. But whether those animals intend to deceive is a different matter. Some birds will feign injury to distract predators from their nests, but that's not quite the same thing as lying. It's more like distracting. But even if humans don't have a lock on the lying market, we do it more, we do it bigger, and we do it better than any other species on the planet. Specialization and prevarication nicely illustrate the uniquely social nature of language. This social component has not gotten nearly the attention it deserves in traditional approaches to linguistics, but times are changing, and it'll be a point of emphasis in this course. The final two universals are add-ons to Hockett's original list of design features. Rather than being features of language per se, these are universal patterns of how language is organized in the brain and how it unfolds during development. Focusing first on the standard brain network, there is remarkable similarity in the neural machinery for all language users on the planet. To explain this, here's some very basic neuroanatomy. The brain is divided up into two hemispheres, the left and the right, and 4 lobes: frontal, temporal,